Hey everyone, welcome to the program WRSA Radio. I am your host, Grenadier One. As always, I hope you are having a good week. I am doing well as we trundle along on the downfall of Western civilization. I always get kind of a chuckle out of that phrase because back when I was a teenager, we had a VHS video called "The Decline and Fall of Western Civilization," Part Two. That was a bunch of heavy metal performances, like bands and interviews with them. It was out of a series that was put out over the course of about, I think it was like 18 years. It started in the late 80s or the late 70s, early 80s, and went all the way to like 98 was the last Part Three was put out. But we watched that thing so many times, and part one was about punk music, but we didn't have that one. We had to rent that one, so we didn't see it as much. But anyway, this week on Gab, someone in the context of the Queen passing mentioned the Sex Pistols and their song "God Save the Queen," and I responded to that by pointing out that I found it ironic that Johnny Rotten is seen as more of a right wing voice or a radical voice in the UK now because he's still anti-establishment. The establishment is what has changed. It's now so counter to everything that is Western civilization that we've come full circle. The whole idea of punk music and metal, heavy metal to a lesser extent. And those movements in music was to combat the corporate control of the music industry and how that, represented the establishment control of society. And punk is still that. Metal is still that. It's just that the establishment has shifted further and further away from what is an ideal and functioning society, that it's punk and metal to seek out and promote traditional lifestyle. I think those are still areas of entertainment that you find people who we could consider conservative or traditional, which is it's such a crazy thing to me, remembering where we were, 40 something years ago or 30 something years ago. It's just a crazy honk world we live in. Anyway, what is the topic of the show this week? Well, we're going to face some facts here. We're going to put something in your face that you can't ignore. We're going to talk about how the enemies of Western civilization want to eliminate us and end our way of life. We're going to make it so plain and clear to you that you can't deny it. So here we go. So let's go back and just touch a minute on the dark Biden speech, what's come to be called the dark Biden speech from a couple of weeks back. And I had intended to hit this last week, but with the Queen passing, I wanted to cover that a little bit, just be a little current and kind of address that, as it had happened when I was doing the show. But so let's go back and look at Biden giving his speech in Philadelphia. And in this speech, Biden declared MAGA, and let's be honest, when they say MAGA, they're saying anyone on the right who does not, willingly accept and promote their ideology. But they encompass that and wrap that all in the term MAGA and try to associate it with Trump followers, and then even more what you could call outside or fringe elements of the right. Now, I'm not passing judgment on those. I would consider myself more of a fringe right person. But they try to associate all that together with the term MAGA and paint it with a very broad brush and very negative brush. But that's basically what it is anyone not willingly accepting and promoting their ideology. Biden declares MAGA to be an enemy of democracy, the patron saint of the left, democracy. And he declares MAGA to be basically domestic terrorists. So the President of the United States goes on to national media and declares his political opponents to be enemies of the people and terrorists. Now, folks, I'm not sure if you've been paying attention to the past 20 years, ever since 9/11, the anniversary that we just had here for 9/11, that I noticed was very much underplayed and much less obvious and out there than it has been in the past. But at any rate, if you haven't been paying attention since 9/11, let me clue you in into what the West has been doing to people that they declare to be terrorists. Uh, Targeted assassinations, drone strikes, shutting down the financing, shutting down the means for terrorists to communicate, capturing them and putting them in jail with no trial for indefinite periods of time. And this is on top of, that's just a short list, on top of many smaller tactics and techniques that are being targeted at so-called terrorists and people who might be perceived as becoming terrorists. A whole menagerie of program and methods being put out there, covertly in social media to drive and shape what people think and people who supposedly might be terrorists. Now go back through that list, and when you check them off, you're going to see that all but those first two have been used against right-wing political followers and operatives. And I'm not really ruling out the first two being used on some very select people who really riled up the establishment. I think the jury is still out on that. We have some people that we know who passed away under mysterious circumstances. Let's just say it that way. That I think you could make the argument fell under the category of those two first items on the list. And where we are now with Biden declaring us terrorists, what we are seeing is clearing the air. They're clearing the way, providing cover for those last two tactics to be more openly used, and not only used covertly or sparingly. No, we're moving into a phase of the game where it will be acceptable to the political establishment to openly call for widespread use of dynamic and kinetic tactics against right-wing political followers. And I'm using those terms because of the platforms that I'm on, and just to make sure that we don't run afoul of an algorithm there. But you understand what I'm talking about. So what do we see this week? What do we see happen? After Biden makes this speech, what do we see what happens? We see multiple leftist members of Congress calling for eliminating the right. One says that MAGA must be killed. One says that the overturning of Roe is a call to arms for the left. Now, this is right on cue, folks. This is just going to increase. It's going to happen more and more. And the followers of the left are going to listen to it, and they're going to act on these words. Now, we've seen some backtracking on this as these members of Congress, Ryan and whatever her name is from Hawaii, I believe she's from. They've started sort of backtracking on this. Well, I didn't really mean actually killing. I was talking about the backing the blue. That's what I was talking about, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But at any rate, that's the line of BS that they sell to us. So bottom line that you need to be aware of, bottom line that you need to be taking into account, is that if you are in heavy leftist areas of the country, first off, you need to be taking steps to defend yourself and your family if you haven't done that already. Okay, you should have. If you're listening to this show, you should be aware of what's been going on for a long time. You should be well ahead of the game here. But for those of you who might just be getting on board the program here, you need to be taking steps to defend yourself and your family. You know what is legal and what you can do in your area, so I can't tell you and give you advice about that. I can't tell you exactly what to do, but you might even be in a position where there are laws that prevent you from doing that. And I don't want to go into details here because of the platform again, but let's just say that you might have to be making a decision in that situation, whether you want to continue to observe those or not. But second, you need to be really considering your choice of home, where you're living. If you are so surrounded that your personal safety might be in question when this ramps up, because guys, this is going to ramp up. Okay, this is not the end of this by any stretch of the imagination. Well, folks, you might want to consider that it is time to bail out of that area. Okay, cut your losses. What is more valuable to you? Some equity in a piece of real estate, or your life, or the lives of your family? What's more important? I don't think that's really even an argument there. Okay, the time is now for you to be making the choices that are going to affect you the rest of your life. It's time. It's well past time for you to be getting into your space where you intend to make a stand, or at least circle up and hold up until you can get to that space. It's time to be working with your teams and getting your skills and preparedness in order. It's been time, but now the writing should be clear for you. Get moving and get your shit together. Okay? Be ready to move in 5. That's where we're at right now. So let's get back to Dark Biden, or Darth Biden, as you could say, Darth Sniffles. Let's get back to his speech and talk about a few things. Now, the media covered for this. Very, very few people on the left questioned the optics of this speech and the obvious communist overtones to the red lighting and the use of the guards, the military guards. There was some token grumbling from a few kind of low-tier media types, but overall it was looked at as being a fantastic speech, and it was even called something that Biden's duty required him to do. You know, the people that spoke out against it, that said things about it, that was being done to provide, well, we didn't all accept it. Some people questioned it, but it was safe for somebody who was low tier to question it, because if something happened, they could backtrack, and the more obvious personalities didn't have to take a reputation hit to do that. But it should be clear that the media will cover for this administration with nothing more than those token words of objection, and that really serves the purpose of just setting up the administration to answer what are obvious concerns that the public's going to have about this stuff. This is a rope-a-dope that's being played out on normie America. Now, we call this Dark Biden because it's a play on the dark Trump memes that were going around a few months back, and those are funny. Okay, there was humor there, and I want to kind of talk about the meaning of them for a minute, because I think it sheds some light on really how out of touch these elitists are. The dark Trump meme came about because of a desire to try and counter some of the really artificial sweetener level of pro-Trump media that gets put out there. Just some very cringe-worthy images and memes that normies and boomers just eat up and post on Facebook and other social media. And this was counter to that. It was putting forth the idea that Trump should become more serious and move into more of an aggressive and kind of ominous mindset and phase, where he seriously spoke of and just embraced the idea of, getting revenge and taking the deep state to task in a future administration. And basically it was just heralding the day that MAGA would return and right all the wrongs that we have all seen in the recent past, in a very dark way. Okay, it's aggressive and it's dark, yes, but it was something that has legitimacy because it was justified. The injustice that we've seen, justifies taking that kind of tone. The lawlessness and the evil that we are facing must be confronted, and when you confront evil, it's not a bright and shiny moment. Okay, oftentimes you must be unflinching and unmoved by emotional pleas and appeals, and you must root out evil and mercilessly pursue it, degrade it and eliminate it. And that's dark, and that's basically the essence of dark MAGA. And when this is done out of righteousness and in the pursuit of truth and what is moral, then the darkness is justified. It's called for because of the depths of the evil that we face. The Dark Biden meme began as a way to paint Biden for what he is, which is he is a figurehead of the deep state and the elitist evil. He's the puppet of demonic and immoral agents who seek to enslave the world. It was not something that was done to flatter Biden at all. It was done to, accurately depict his administration and to shame anyone who was associated with it. And that's how the right uses it. It looks similar to the Trump dark memes, but it isn't the antithesis of it. It is evil acting out of authority, abusing its authority. That's what it represents. And this whole speech that Biden gave and the adoption of the dark Biden persona and imagery was done because some White House staffers thought it looked cool and they wanted to take ownership of that dark Biden meme space. It was completely oblivious to them what this was going to look like and how this was going to turn out. It was over their heads because we all know the left can't meme. They don't get it. They don't understand how and why it works, and they're terrible at it. Save for a few examples out there that you might argue were copies of something from the right or were probably done by someone who was really more of a fence sitter or a libertarian or something like that. Every meme the left floats out there is just garbage. So they didn't get this. They didn't get what this was going to do to Biden and how it was going to make him look. Normies are not that deep into the internet. They don't have a clue about dark Trump and dark Biden meme space because it really had not percolated to the surface yet. It was still something that was floating around in more obscure platforms and places in social media, and it hadn't. If you don't see it on Facebook, it's not a thing yet, okay? Or being mentioned on Instagram or some other places, it's not a thing in the normie mind space, okay? So it hadn't got there. It was still in its infancy. So when they roll this out there and it goes over like a bag of concrete, the normie is taken aback by it and is disturbed by it. And Biden's poll numbers are in the tank. Not that poll numbers mean anything, but it just, to me, it really demonstrated and showed how out of touch these elitist people are in the administration. And we're not even talking about the people behind the throne. We're talking about the average, White House staffer, this recently out of college, late 20s, early 30s, little minions that work around in the White House. They are completely out of touch with America. And it's all just a little sideshow and background on the optics of the whole thing. And I don't think it actually amounts to much, but it does put the whole speech into proper context. And it's going to be very important in the future when we can point back to it as the point at which the world was put on notice that this administration had made actual literal enemies of 80 million Americans and initiated and escalated the war upon them. Make no mistake about this, guys. We are at war. We just have not really got things going all that hot yet. It's a room temperature war, but it's a war. We have the president and his party openly calling for killing MAGA and taking action against the political right. And I don't know how much more clear we need to be here. Okay, again, that whole list of things that I laid out, every single one of them, you can find example after example after example of this administration putting those tactics to use on its political opposition, and that's us. Okay, and this will continue. As I said, it's going to lead to bad things happening to people before most of the people wake up to the reality of where we are. And not that they will actually do anything, but they will at least more actively admit and acknowledge that things are happening and that the people who were telling them that this was coming were right all along. And to quote the great Burt Gummer, I take no pleasure in being right about such things. So spread it around, guys. Share the videos, share links to the mothership with every normie that you know, everybody in your family. Put it out there. I know you may be tired of it. Maybe you may have talked yourself blue in the face, but somebody's got to do it, guys. Okay, this shit ain't going to move itself. But that's all I got time for today. Like and subscribe. Come see us over on Gab and the Mothership, and I'll see you on the next episode.